When it comes to college and career ready, one thing I've learned from going to college, from experience in college and in my career is that I need to be comfortable in situations where problems are occurring. And that allowed me to challenge myself, but also challenge the problem without fear of failure, because that's going to happen. Well, as we go through problems and begin to work out problems, we're going to fail at times, and those failures will drive to our success. Students need to be challenged daily, but they also need to be in a safe environment, an environment where they're comfortable enough to know that when they come across a problem that's uncomfortable, that they're going to be safe in challenging themselves to find those answers. We need to create that environment in the classroom. We need to create that environment at each school site. This way, students will be comfortable with being uncomfortable and solving problems. So what are some things that problem solvers are going to do in your classroom? They're going to identify the problems. They need to understand the obstacles to overcome within the problem. And then they'll come up with some solutions. Once they have some solutions, they'll prioritize, and they need to evaluate and closely look at the different solutions to select which one is going to work best for them to solve this problem. There are many types of problem-solving solutions. The ideal problem-solving solution is very common and used in a lot of classrooms. The five components really work well together. One of the things from experience is that a lot of times we focus on identifying the problem and then acting on the problem, but we skip those two steps, or where they're not as focused on as defining the problem and exploring strategies and solutions. And this can be done starting in kindergarten, is to talk with students and to work and model with students that ability to look at problems but also define and explore how you might be able to solve the problem before you start acting on it. This cures or curtails a lot of frustration as students get older if they learn these techniques. Before a student can solve higher order thinking problems, they need to be able to understand the problem or the task. Lower grade level, if you can use formative measures to focus on identifying problems to solve before you even try and solve the problems, will really help. Once a student is independent in identifying problems and begin to understand what kind of strategies they might use, then you're going to see real success as problem solvers as they get ready for college and career. Problem solving strategies are learned skills. They need to be modeled, taught, and practiced regularly. Now, when we're talking about modeling, at the earliest ages, to go through problems and any kind of complex problems that are appropriate for the grade level and the age, to talk about and to think aloud, to show students that there are strategies involved in solving problems. Once we start teaching the strategies to solve problems, students will need to practice them regularly. And one of the things that they'll have to practice is applying a strategy that's appropriate to the problem. Now, some students aren't going to grasp this right away, and it could take years. Now, obviously, as the students build skills, it'll help them alleviate frustration, but it also helps the teacher in regard to, as they get older, they'll be able to get more complex work product, and that work product will have more appropriate strategies, which means the work product will be better, which is going to make it easier to evaluate and grade. So everyone will benefit from starting early in modeling, teaching, practicing, and applying problem-solving strategies. Now, to get started on building these skills, one thing is to strategize with questions. Students need to learn to ask questions about a problem, because once they understand the issues, then they can begin to make sense of the information or relative information in the problem. Now, there's four things that you could get started right away with students, and pretty much at all grade levels. It just depends on at the younger ages, the teacher's going to have to do a little more work for the student, but that would be creating lists, organizing thinking with outlines, using graphic organizers, and taking note-taking skills. Those type of things can help right away in preparing students and moving students forward in problem solving. Is there one key to problem solving would be that students need to be independent critical thinkers. And as the student gets older, too much support doesn't allow this to happen. Earlier in the school years, we have a lot of structured tasks, and they can be difficult, but they're not necessarily complex. Now, these can be used to teach the skills involved in problem solving. But as a student gets older, you want to do less support and less scaffolding for the student and allow them to think on their own. Unstructured tasks usually have more than one correct answer and are more real life based. They require the student to show and justify their thinking. Students make decisions in solving unstructured problems. Now, this is very real world. We often need more than one source of information, and the students will need to learn how to judge the value of information. And that's where the process of relevancy. Problem-solving skills include the ability to identify non-relevant information. Students will need modeling with this, and they'll need a lot of independent practice, but they'll also need to be able to fail at times to learn and to apply skills that work for them. It's going to take students several years to do this, and they're going to be able to work through this only in a trust and healthy environment. Now, one thing that you want to do is make sure that your students, in regard to problem solving, work towards independence. Once a student is independent, then they'll be ready for college and career